Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really glad to have on the show Rachel Bentley. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, Gordon.
Yes, and Rachel, some folks might know Rachel from Next Level Practice, but Rachel, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you for having me. I started out back in 2019. I was working in state government and had been for several years and was really getting burned out in that system for various reasons that we can imagine.
Hmm.
And I decided to start my own solo private practice, and it was a leap of faith. I was scared to take that leap. And so I did it in a very calculated way. I started the practice very part-time on the side and remained in my agency job. And things began to evolve. My caseload got full in that part-time capacity. And this eventually led me to leave that job, which was my goal, and start developing a group practice because I started noticing there was a lot of need, and I had referrals that I couldn't take myself, and decided to get on that group practice journey, which I could say a ton about, but it's been
Hmm.
quite a journey over the last six
Hmm.
years. And today we are a group of around 40 clinicians. We have been at that number for the last few years. I don't intend for us to get bigger in number,
Hmm.
but lots of, as we can, as we know in practice ownership, especially with a group this large, lots of trials and tribulations, lots of challenges. And I started having folks come to me and ask me, and maybe this has happened to many of us that are consultants, could I pick your brain? How did you do
Hmm.
this? How do you do that? Like all of the questions, right? How do you sustain a group? What do you do around hiring? How about billing? It turned into like, can I pick your brain became more and more frequent. And I was like,
Hmm.
Zoom and in coffee shops and just really trying to help people with little nuggets of growing their practice. And I realized I'm a clinical supervisor too, and I'm a teacher at heart. And so I love to empower and help people, but I needed to put some boundaries around the picking
Right.
of the brain, so to speak.
Hmm.
And so I decided to develop my company, Next Level Private Practice, really so that I could think more about like who are the folks that I want to help in consulting? What does that look like? What are those offerings? And really just to put some boundaries up for myself, for my own sanity,
Hmm.
because I was
Hmm.
already working really hard as a clinician and a supervisor and a practice owner. So what does this consulting piece and side sort of look like for me? So that's essentially how Next Level was born.
Hmm.
Really as a result of the ask from my own community. So
Right.
that's how that
Yeah.
unfolded.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that story sounds very familiar, and that's much of the same thing that happened to me as well,
Mhm.
in starting the practice of therapy. And so, yeah, it's
Yes.
evolved, and yeah, just same kinds of things.
And I don't know
Well,
that I didn't
yeah, go
set
ahead.
out. I don't know if you set out to be a consultant, but
Mm-hmm.
it kind of it evolved out of that need. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and too, like you, I love being able to help people with those things. But yeah, like you said, setting some boundaries around that, and being paid for your time. Your time is worth a lot with the knowledge that you have.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that we lose sight of that sometimes, like the value of
Hmm.
our time. And I know in the beginning, especially with consulting, I was very caught up in well, I just want to help people. And like people would email me and say, hey, can you answer a quick question? But really, the questions were like an hour talk.
Hmm.
And trying to differentiate when can I answer a quick question versus when do I say, hey, that's
Hmm.
actually a consulting hour, and just
Hmm.
trying to navigate that whole thing.
Right.
I think that's a whole other
Right.
talk, but like I
Sure.
it was challenging, right? It was challenging to
Sure.
figure out how to do that and how to
Yeah.
put the value of how much you charge and things of that
Hmm.
nature. It was really like a
Right.
whole new world. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
yeah, whole thing. Well, I
Yes.
know one of the things we were talking about before we started recording is just how you've been able to kind of incorporate or do incorporate kind of your clinical thinking with what you do with your staff and what you do with yourself and all of that kind of thing with using internal family systems, IFS. And so tell us your ideas around that and how what you've learned.
Yeah, so just to give a short context about the IFS journey, I didn't know a lot about IFS several years ago. The model started blowing up post-COVID because it was the first time folks could access IFS training in a virtual format. And so
Mm-hmm.
the training just blew up. It's incredibly popular. There's a wait list. It's very expensive. There's so much around accessibility to getting trained in the model, but which is a whole other thing. But I was led there through becoming EMDR certified. I was in EMDR consultation, really trying to get that model down. And I had a consultant say, like, you need to do parts work with this person before you move forward with EMDR. And it was this moment, like, well, what's that? What do you mean? And so it led me to research IFS and eventually do the IFS level 1 training. And I was a little frustrated, Gordon, because I was like, well, I've already like trained in this other model and paid all this money, and now you're telling me I have to go learn it. So that's really why I learned the model so that I could help my EMDR folks, just for a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of context, because it's a little
Right,
bit of a
right.
wild story.
Mm-hmm.
So I go into level 1 not knowing a lot about IFS, and you go to any training and you think, oh, I'm going to go listen to lecture, I might do some practicing, and I'm going to be taking notes, and maybe I'm going to tune out some of the time because how much information can I take in an 8-hour day? But what really happens in level 1 is it's a lot about getting to know yourself and your own parts. And it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of discovery around, if you haven't thought about yourself through a parts framework, it's really getting to know yourself in a new way. And it's very, very, very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very vulnerable in front of a group of therapists, which is it felt even,
Mm-hmm.
harder. And I learned so much about myself and like the parts of me that come up when I'm in situations like this where I have to practice or perform, or where I don't know what I'm doing. This is a new model. Like this is
Yeah.
like slipper. This is like, oh, like what comes up for us. I think about what comes up for new therapists that we're trying to mentor or train when they first get started. What comes up for us when we don't feel like we know what we're doing. That was like all of level 1 for me. And it
Mm-hmm.
was actually a really difficult, intense time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much of the model I actually learned because I was learning so much about me. But fast forward to doing a lot more consultation training in IFS. And also, I have to name, because I think it's so important, I don't know how much we name this in the therapist circles, the importance of doing our own work. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot since, and I've done a lot of therapy in my life, but since becoming trained in the model, just I've been a client in the model with an IFS
Mm-hmm.
therapist, and it has just been so incredibly helpful in every role that I play. And so I can't say enough about it, about the value of the model. And so, would it be helpful for me to transition a little bit into how that's shown up in my own clinical work or as a
Sure,
leader?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So I started noticing, I guess, as a group practice owner, I started noticing that there were things in my practice that I was sort of avoiding. One of those was high conflict conversations with my team. And when I say high conflict, I just mean like hard convos, right? Like someone is
Mm-hmm.
not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or any sort of conversation that brings in conflict or where people can really challenge you. I noticed I was avoiding those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't good for business. And
Right, right.
and I
Yeah.
realized there was like this sort of people-pleasing part that I had in my system that wanted more than anything to make everyone in my group happy, to make everything peaceful, and that really wanted to create an environment that was different, that wasn't a CMH or a system or a state government or an agency, but that was a place where people were respected and felt valued. And right, I really wanted to, which I do hope, Gordon, that I have
Mm-hmm.
created that.
Yeah,
But
right, right.
there wasn't balance. It was all, there's this people-pleasing part of me that wants to make everyone happy, and therefore I'm not addressing some of those issues that I should be. And so that was one of the first things I noticed after IFS training. And I really had to get to know that people-pleasing part of myself. And part of the model is, well, why do these parts do what they do? Why do they show up when they show up? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and IFS says, well, they show up to protect you. But the key is like, but what are they protecting me from? What is this people pleasing doing for me? What is it actually protecting me from? And I had to learn like so much about that. So that's like one good example of how a part showed up as a practice owner. And clinically, as a therapist, we really start to notice and we can talk about it like it's transference and countertransference, but when we start to really think about we have certain clients in the room with us and we might feel some activation. We might feel anxiety or fear, or maybe we're tuning out. Maybe we're getting bored. I mean, we hate to admit that this would ever happen, but it does,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But we start to notice, like, I started noticing moments as a clinician where I wasn't completely present and really connected and really tuned into my client. And so I started getting really curious about why is this happening when it's happening and like what do I do about it? But I was just
Mm-hmm.
like so much more aware, like Rachel, you're getting knocked out of that presence that is so important when certain clients are in the room. And so what do we do here? And IFS just helped me like think about that really explicitly and just be so much more aware of
Mm-hmm.
when my part showed up in that in what I sort of call the therapy chair.
You're
Um,
right.
so that
Right.
was so transformational as well. And I also use a lot of the concepts in clinical supervision, and I ask my supervisees, well, what are you noticing is happening? And it's okay if you're activated, because guess what? We all get activated, but
You're right.
we have to get curious about it, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to try our very best to be as present as we can and hold space for our clients. That's what we do. So if we're not, we have to figure out why. Um,
Right.
just some examples of how I've infused the model into my work and also in my consulting with other practice owners and identifying
Mm-hmm.
some of their parts that are coming up. And I'll name some of mine and they'll go, wait a minute, you have parts
Mm-hmm.
come up? And I'm like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
When we're
Yes.
running practices and we're managing people and we're leading, a lot of activation is going to come, especially when things aren't going well or a curveball is thrown our way. Yeah.
Hmm. Right, right. Well, yeah, I'm grinning because, it's interesting how that you mentioned the people pleasing.
Yeah.
I've recently started with working with a new therapist for myself, and
Mhm.
that was one of the big things I said. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and
Yes.
so that's the thing that I need. I need to be more and more. I need to really tune into that work for myself and
Hmm.
recognizing how it has, the depth you mentioned parts, just how does that come out and what is it that brings that up in me and what is it, what's the purpose it's serving for me? And yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's just really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and I noticed that one of the first part that I really kind of labeled as a part for myself or got to know was what IFS sort of calls the inner critic. And I think we all have the inner critic. We all have a version,
Sure.
but it would
Hmm.
be this part that would come up kind of right here in this ear, and it would kind of just like relentlessly, why didn't you get this done? And why didn't you do this quicker? And
Hmm.
what's wrong with you? And it has like a who do you think you are? Like, why do you think that you can do all these things? And
Hmm.
it sometimes and some people will experience like the voices of people that were critical to them in the past sort of morph into their own inner
Hmm.
critic. Like I hear my
Hmm.
mom, criticizing me in my head. It's super common with a critic, but I started at first, I remember in therapy, because one of the things we ask in IFS is, so how do you feel toward this part? Like, how do you feel toward it
Hmm.
when you actually know it's there? When you think about your people pleaser, it's like, how do you feel toward that people pleaser? How I felt toward my critic was like, well, I hate it. Like, I don't want it around.
Hmm.
I don't want some relentless voice in my head bashing me when I make a mistake. And I remember my therapist saying, I think there's a part that like hates the critic, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right, because
Yeah.
our parts will like ping pong or elicit each other, and some of our parts work together, and some are in very different camps and are in opposition of each other. And I thought, wait, what do you mean I have a part that hates the critic? And my mind was like blown. But
Hmm.
in getting to know, to actually connecting and getting to know this critic, I realized this critic's been around a long time. Most of our parts have historically been around a long time, and its role is to like sort of stop me in my tracks so that I don't fail, so that I don't make mistakes, so that I don't be vulnerable. I mean, it has a really harsh way of doing it, but it
Mm-hmm.
feels like if it brings all that to the surface, that I will stop. And if I stop, if I don't move forward, say with an idea or whatever, I won't fail at it. Because
Mm-hmm.
it fears a lot about me failing. Because when I fail, then that means I'm not good enough, right? So there's like,
Right.
so it goes deeper down into the dirt, like down into those like negative core beliefs. And once I realized like that's what it was trying to protect me from,
Mm-hmm.
then I could have more compassion toward it. Like, oh, I get
Right.
it. Like, okay, I get you. It's like, here's me talking to my critic. Okay, I get you. I get why you're
Mm-hmm.
here. I
Mm-hmm.
understand you now. Like, you think if you say these things to me, it kind of reminds me of like sometimes in like the coaching world with athletes where you have coaches that are like uber critical that somehow
Mm-hmm.
will motivate the athlete to do better.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that was my parallel with my critic. I was like, I see what your strategy is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get that, like, in some ways that could be effective, but it's also harmful. It's also hurtful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of IFS, like the journey, is getting to know your parts really well and then having them trust you and having them trust that, like, okay, I can put my foot out there and be vulnerable and I might fail, but it doesn't mean anything bad about me if I do. And once they can start to trust that, then it's almost like you can renegotiate what they do and what they don't do in your system. You have a lot more choice about what parts lead when, if that makes sense. So
Right.
it's so freeing to like connect and get
Mm-hmm.
to know them. And it's also very different than a lot of the ways we're trained because we're often trained to teach clients to like kick your part away, kick your part down the road, stop it,
Mm-hmm.
tell it to shut up, put it on a shelf, put it in a box.
Right.
In a lot of models, we're actually taught to push our parts away, not to embrace them and get to know them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why this model has been so amazing for me because once I started getting to know them and started renegotiating what they do and don't do, I was able to authentically be me and I was able to lead, which is
Right.
just, I feel like is such a gift.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And it's just, I was trying to remember, I think I've been recently been using the Calm app just to help with sleep and all that kind of thing. And,
Hmm.
it talks about, it was one I was listening, a meditation I was listening to recently, just talking about and it was around going to sleep and the fact that you're awake is to be able to, is just embrace that you're awake
Hmm.
rather
Hmm.
than trying to fight, okay, I need the awake to go away. Well, let me just embrace the fact that I'm awake, you
Yes.
know?
And maybe even add in IFS, we'd say, well, let's get curious about the awakeness.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, in theory, like, we're supposed to be sleeping right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Right, right.
curiosity around, like, what is awakeness about for me right now? Do I
Mm-hmm.
have like a narrative of worry running, or is there some
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, or am I super stressed, or am I just,
Mm-hmm.
like, but what the curiosity around that, yeah, like embracing it, that it's here now, let's get to know it a bit, right? I'll say to clients
Mm-hmm.
when they have trouble sleeping, well, I wonder what was stopping you from sleeping. Like, was there a voice in your head, or did you have pain in your body, or like, what do you think? Let's get curious about what stopped you from that sleep
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus like, okay, take some sleeping meds and don't look at screens. And not that like sleep hygiene isn't good, but
Uh-huh.
but getting to
Mm-hmm.
know the parts that keep us awake are,
Right. Right.
there's so much value. It's sort of a different way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure is. Sure is.
Yeah.
Well, in thinking about your, how this has affected your leadership style and just working with your staff and your practice, what has come up for you?
Well, people will say to me often, like, wow, you just show up in the room. I definitely try to. That we learn in IFS is like, how do we show up authentically? We have to be what we call self-led. So IFS uses this term like self or self-energy. And self is made up of these, IFS calls them the eight C's. So things like clarity and confidence and compassion and calm. And But if we have some or all of those elements and we can notice, yeah, I feel calm right now and I can have a lot of compassion for what you're saying versus judging you. If we are self-led, we just typically are better leaders, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're leading from our authenticity, from who we really are, not from parts of ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I noticed with my team is like if the people pleasing was showing up, which it was, or some other examples would be I had this part that was really afraid to overburden my staff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to give them too much because again, I didn't want them to feel like they felt in those systems like CMH and such.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't necessarily giving them enough work to do. So I had this like guilt about giving them too much. So I wouldn't give them enough, right? There wasn't balance with that. Things
Right.
weren't balanced. Everyone, oh, Rachel, you're such a great boss. You're so nice. You're great. But in some instances, it also meant that I guess what I would say is I was kind of a pushover. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was taken advantage of in some cases by some of the folks that worked with me or around me. And I was too nice, so to speak. That too
Mm-hmm.
nice part was up.
Mm-hmm.
I could give lots of examples, but what I would say now is just because I know my parts pretty well at this point, and it's not perfect, I still get activated and they still take over sometimes. But I'll notice, like in meetings or in interactions with my team, I'll notice, like when I get knocked out of self energy, I'll notice it and go, there's a part here right now that's either criticizing or wanting to people please or the perfectionist. I think we all have a
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist comes around.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I'll notice that. And sometimes it's funny because, like in our meetings as a team, I'll say, all right, so I have this part of me that really wants to people please right now and really wants to care give right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, everybody, let me recenter. And they know. They're like, okay. So I'll name it. I'll name that the parts are in the room for my team. And I'll say something like, because we're all to some degree caregivers as therapists, I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any of you to take care of me around this right now, but I just have to name there's a part in the room, name it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, recenter, right? And I invite them to do the same. Or if I can see that like a part of them has taken over, I'll say, let's pause for a second. Like, well, let's just take an inventory of what might be happening inside for you right now. Gordon, people don't always receive this really well. They'll be like,
Yeah.
don't, don't parts
No.
work me, don't do. But I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like really, like if they're, I know that this isn't like you talking, this isn't like who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, like, can I support you right now? Like, if someone, let's say someone gets really angry and they start sort of coming at me in an angry way, I might say, hold on, let's pause for a second. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would be easy for me to get angry too, or for it to
Mm-hmm.
elicit me to shut down, or because parts elicit parts in relationships. And so for me to be able to just go, let's pause for a second, it seems like there may be something happening for you right now. And I'm wondering if we can pause and get curious about it. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always go super well in that moment.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's
we're doing
yeah.
that versus just starting to go at
Yeah,
each other.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
I heard recently from a friend learning the difference between being nice versus being kind.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
being nice is more about people pleasing and trying to appease and all of that sort of thing. Whereas being kind is being more to the point and more direct, but doing it in a kind way and not doing it in a
Yes.
demeaning way and that sort of thing. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's been something I've been thinking a lot about here recently as well. Yeah.
And I think there's the middle ground between being so harsh and critical, like some of us have experienced from leaders we've worked for or with,
Mm-hmm.
and then being a complete like so nice that you never challenge anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that comes up for me is like when I have to make changes in the practice, and I know one likes change, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I will say things to the team like, I know that change is hard, but I need you all to understand that it is my job to hold the big picture of this practice. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about profitability. There's a lot of things I have to hold and think about. And sometimes I'm going to make decisions that you all don't agree with. And I'm happy to hear your feedback, but I have to hold all of that. And because I
Mm-hmm.
do, there may be things that you don't like that happen. It's not like you,
Mm-hmm.
or, this isn't. And I'll say statements like that, and people are just kind of like, whoa, whoa, I didn't think about
Mm-hmm.
it. You're right. Like, you are the one holding the big picture, and you are
Mm-hmm.
the one who's responsible to make sure that we all have jobs for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is kind for me to just say it. I mean, it's direct and it's true. May not agree. Um,
Right, right.
but that
Yeah,
is the nature of me being in the seat that I'm in,
yeah,
right? And I'm
yeah.
just very like upfront about that. Where
Right, right.
before IFS, I may not have been as direct about that.
Yes, yes, yes. I go,
Yes.
wow. Yeah, this is such great stuff. And, Rachel, I guess we better be mindful of our time. I know you've had a long day of doing webinars already as we're doing this, but one of the things I do want you to mention is you've got a conference coming up that you're sponsoring and leading. And so
Yeah.
say more about that.
Yes, so with my consulting company, Next Level Private Practice, we are hosting the Next Level Private Practice Summit in the fall. So we're going to be doing this in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the end of September 2025. And I will say, me, the reason, because people are like, why are you doing a summit? Like, this is a lot of work. We're gonna have 30 speakers and CEs and all of the things that I think people will want to come for. But to be honest, the reason that I created the summit is because I often crave connection and community with folks that do what I do. And I've really
Hmm.
tried to seek out retreats and conferences and summits and events that I can attend. And I've attended many where I can meet folks, right, and have that
Hmm.
community. So I personally want to bring people together for that connection and community. But I know that's not the only reason people may want to come. I
Right.
know that people want answers to their private practice questions answered. I know that people want CEs. I know that people want to hear a new perspective from new speakers. And so we're going to have all of that happening. And the other piece of it is I really want to invite everyone in private practice. I want our solo owners represented. I don't think that they're always represented at all of our events, and
Mhm.
they can be pretty isolated. They're working, solo. Our group owners, of course, like me, or maybe just people that they're in an agency or a system and they're really wanting to enter into private practice world, but they have all these fearful parts, like maybe you and I had when we started our
All
practices.
right, right.
So much fear around billing and all these different things, finances. Maybe those people want to come too just to get exposure to the world of private
Hmm.
practice and all of the ways that we talk about it and think about it. So we're really going to be trying to balance or really infuse business aspects of practice, clinical aspects of practice. So we're trying to have something for everyone, Gordon. And again, my mission is to bring all of us together and give us a place to connect.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's
So
what's the website that they can go to find out more
yeah,
and
so if folk,
register?
yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Hmm.
So you can find us at nextlevelprivatepractice.com. And on the website, there's a banner right at the top of the website that leads you right to the summits page. And it also can give folks a glimpse of some of the other things that I offer in consulting there on the website. But I would love for folks to go check the website out and check out our summit. I'm excited about it. It is talk about parts in the room. Try planning your first, because I've had successfully had some retreats and smaller events, but to plan something this big, lots of parts in the room, Gordon.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited, and I'm excited for the folks that will be there with us as well.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, great. Well, we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary, and of course for people to find it. And Rachel, golly, this has been a great conversation, and the time's just flown by. But
Yeah.
we'll be in touch again, and hopefully we'll have another conversation here.